Alright, starting up the stream. I just sneezed too. Good thing I sneezed before I started the stream. Oh, I have the transcoder tonight. Nice. Hello, if you're watching this on the VOD. And hello, if you're just joining now. I'm going to continue the work I started yesterday. I'm working on integrating an egui and winit app. So, to give you an idea, so we're drawing some 2D graphics with wgpu and drawing an egui on top of that. Hey there, A squared. Wow, that was quick. I haven't even been streaming for a minute yet, and you're already here. I hope your day or evening is going well. Yeah, so working on wgpu, winit, egui, all of the 2D graphics stuff. So one of the things I left off on last time was how we are drawing, or not drawing, but like constructing the GUI output from the input using the egui integration with winit. And I didn't like how this was structured, so I wanted to restructure it. It's going well. You're upset about the state of Rust C's testing infrastructure. That's been your life for the past few weeks. I'm sorry to hear that. I take it that the testing infrastructure is not to the level that you would like. And I bet it's one of those things where it's kind of larger, much larger than one person could ever hope to fix on their own, right? So you're kind of dependent on a bunch of other people too. It's called legacy hacks, piling legacy hacks. Isn't that all software? Just kidding. Hey, you know what? I'd say 95% of my job nowadays is working with legacy code. So I wouldn't call it all hacks, but you know, that's one of the reasons why I'm streaming this stuff. Is I kind of get away from legacy stuff, and I can write things in the, what do they call it, greenfield or clean room or whatever, something new and well designed. Hopefully, it's much larger than someone could ever fix on their own. That's why you're doing that. Are you drawn to impossible challenges, or maybe you and others are part of the solution? Actually, you know what? I forgot to turn on my fan. I'm gonna do that. Turning on the fan. Basically, yeah. Okay, so what did I not like about this? We're getting the input from the integration. Then we're borrowing the context from the integration. And then we're turning around and telling the context to run with that input we just got from the integration. I think that was it. I think it was the fact that this context, we're really only borrowing it. No, it's not the context. It's this raw input. We're getting out of the integration only to end up kind of passing it back in. So if we move this into the integration, then the main doesn't even need to be concerned about the input because it doesn't appear anywhere else. Hey there, Owen Coates. How are you doing? How is things? Things are pretty well. How are things with you? Things are better for me streaming wise. That's why I'm trying to start this stuff up again. So, and I finally picked a project I can work on in my spare time that I feel comfortable streaming, and sort of a longer term project. And that was sort of my problem for the last few months, is I really couldn't decide on what I wanted to stream. Just finished your second freelancing client. Feels good? Awesome. I only did like one freelancing thing before I got another full-time job. I thought that it was sort of intimidating finding, what do you call it, gigs? Finding a gig as a freelancer. I kind of took it for granted as a full-time employee, like that, like just work would come to me. As a freelancer, you're like, oh crap, I got to actually go find people to work for. Every single programming thing you've done to learn things has been much larger than I should have done. Just dive in to way too big things. This time there's actually a replacement UI test framework already, but it's not compatible with the previous. Your job right now is to add a sort of migration period where the old software can accept the new data type. Oh, wow. Incompatibility, and then you have to kind of bridge between them. Suppose the code you wrote yesterday in Discord is wonderfully... Oh, yeah, I'd love to see some cursed code. I hope at least you're putting a best effort, even though it's cursed. So you're hopefully making it like as good as you can, even if it's all crusty. Okay, so I want to move this block of code into egui integration so that we don't have to be concerned about this raw input. So I think what I'll just do is move this in directly now, and then I'll give it a name, and then I'll put it into the abstraction. So let's just add it amongst the other integration, other implementations of the abstract window interface. Or it's part of the integration, right? So it's the integration abstraction. So something. I don't know if we'll need to mutate self. We're just going to paste the code there and see what happens. All right, so this is self.input. This is self. We don't need to do self.getContext. It's just self-context, right? So this can take, well, this whole thing can take the place of what we're using context for, which is there. I implied that we do a borrow and drop that line. I think we wanted to return this output, so that means what we're going to be returning the full output. And get rid of this part of it, right? So then I can substitute self input in place of raw input. And I guess we put, no, the context gets tunneled in that way, right? Okay, so the actual run part will need to pass in, what is this called? What do they call it? The run UI, right? So I'll need to copy this whole thing over to here and put that here. You did your freelancing on the Upwork platform. It's for a freelancer video editor site. Oh, cool. Short videos? Nice. Trying to fix the upload file size for videos. So did you work with different like compression profiles? Like a transcoders, stuff like that? I'd imagine that's what I would try to do to solve that kind of problem in general, is just try to figure out a nice compression profile that looked good and made the file sizes smaller. It's cursed only because it's const code. It's a very constrained environment, so it's like compile time. I've heard that both in the modern C++ and in Rust, you can actually go quite a bit into the weeds with compile time code, and that it can be fun, but I haven't done much of it. Code doesn't fit in a Discord message. Need to do some comment. It doesn't even fit? You could put it in a text file and attach it, I suppose. Using Laravel PHP framework in Nginx. Did you know for a while I didn't know how to pronounce Nginx? I would read it as Nginx, and then someone said Nginx, and at one point I'm like, oh, that's how you say that. The server's on DigitalOcean? That's cool. So, yeah, I've never used DigitalOcean. I was playing around with Amazon Web Services, and that can do the same kind of thing, right? It's just a server you can run programs on and set up workflows to do that kind of thing. Turing complete? Of course you can. I could do all of the stuff I'm doing right now in Minecraft, right? Because Minecraft is Turing complete. But I don't know if it would be fun. No traits are allowed in compile time, really? I would think that traits could work at why wouldn't it work at compile time? Isn't compile time really just running a program in order to compile another program? So anyway, maybe I just don't understand it well enough. Okay, I don't want a semicolon at the end here, and I didn't need this one at all either. Okay, it's probably complaining because this is not defined in the trait anywhere. I need to figure out if that context or that input is mutable. I don't think it is. So the run does not need a mutable reference, and neither does input, right? Go back. Yeah, it's also immutable. Actually, that means I don't need this input anymore, right? I can get rid of that. I think this is the signature we want, although we don't want to call it something. I think I want to call it run. Call it run, because it's really just a wrap around the egui context run and then absorbing its own input. We never see that. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to plop it into the trait. We probably need to declare these, right? For now, let's not import it because I want to be careful about mixing imports in the main. Uh-oh. I think I might have been dropping frames there. I dropped 249 frames. Oh no! Mostly that you can't enforce a trait method being able to be run at compile time, kinda. What do you do about a partial equal that looks about the file system which is valid and compiles today? See, I don't know enough about the constraints on compile time code to really understand like what does and doesn't make sense. Why is this complaining here? These do we allow of building a V table? It probably doesn't like this for some reason. Probably because it's impl. So what I'm just going to do is box that. So now it's doesn't need to be sized and it won't complain anymore. Look at that, it fixed it. Boxing is really just putting it on the heap, which is where we need it to be for a trait. Shouldn't impact this much, right? Alright, so that input is just, I suppose I can keep that around. It's just private now, right? Here. Yeah. Okay, and then I need to fix up main. Yeah, so this becomes just the output equals integration run. And then we pass the closure in boxed. Right? Is it, did you put a box new around the whole thing? I think that's how I do it. Right. I actually needed the context for one more thing, so let me undo this for a second just so I can grab this, then redo it, and then I'll... Do I just need the context for the tessellate, or do I use it for other things? Oh, right. Last night I was thinking I could return the output primitives and textures delta and dispense with the full output. Right? Because take the shapes actually pulls, if I remember this right, it pulls out the vector when I call tessellate. It actually takes ownership of those shapes. So I can't return the output and the primitives. It'll complain that I've moved out of the output to generate the primitives. So I was going to return the primitives and then textures. So let's go ahead and do that right here. So call it the full out, call it the primitives and the textures. Egui textures delta. that means this tessellate moves in. This goes away, and this tessellate goes inside of here. Okay, and so then let full output equal that. And then the primitives is to self-context tessellate the full output's shapes. And then we're returning the primitives and the full output dot textures delta. And I'll need to update this. So what is it? Primitives? I should have looked up the type before I did that. Let me undo here so I can see. Oh, did I paste the test? Oh, so I can look at what the type is there. Clipped primitive. Clipped primitive. And then what's textures delta? Something. I go to that and just peek. ePaint textures delta. Wonder if I'll need the rest of the output, like, oh, I think I actually will. I'll need some of these other things. Well, we'll get to that when we get to it, right? Starting to think I'll probably want to make my own structure for this. Or maybe I'm going about this the wrong way. Maybe it has nothing to do with the integration, right? And this is going to be the same, so it's going to be the same for the full tick one too. So maybe I'm going about this all wrong, forcing it into the integration. Yeah, okay, I convinced myself this is all the wrong way to do it. So let's just undo everything I just did. Just hold down that undo key. Okay. Raw. Won't be the first, or it's not the first, and it won't be the last time I totally undo 10 minutes of work. Hey there, Prof Elements. How are you doing? Compile time code is mostly intended to be pure and implemented by an interpreter for the Rust abstract machine. Okay, so it's not the full compiler then. So it's a subset of what you could do. Hey, Anakin Luke. Hi to you as well. Hope you're having a good day. Reminder that you can always throw in a unit type and read the error type. Yeah, it's true. I don't get to really work on this stuff that much, so kind of getting rusty in my Rust. Okay, so maybe we do, let me think about this. Something needs to move the input over to the run, right? And this comes out of the close this other stuff for a sec. It comes out of that state. Okay, it's not from the context. Okay, so maybe it's not so bad that we see the input. I think what I didn't like about it is that it comes out here just to go back into here. So you know what I could just do to make it better is to just remove its name. Like that. Then we didn't see the input at all as a name. The integration runs egui for us. I don't think that no, because the integration should be only what's different for each window implementation. It's the same. So that's, I think I was maybe too tired when I wrote that. Yeah, we don't need to do that. I think this is what I actually want. The integration should have only the things that are specific to W in it. So for example, this state is an actually integration state, right? So it's going to be different for full tick. So that is definitely different between integration implementations. The context, why did we need context again? Did we need it? Maybe we didn't need it. Oh no, how come it didn't show up before? There we go. So we need it there. Is that the only place we need it? We need the context in order to run. So maybe the context shouldn't live inside the integration. Let me consider that. So let me consider where is the context used? Okay, so we need the context to call on event, which is in the integration level. It wants the context. What if I just pass in the context to feed input event? Calls feed input event. It's called internally, okay. It's called internally from something that doesn't have the context. So that's why we needed to hold on to it. Okay, so then we have no choice. It has to at least borrow the context. Can we give it to the integration when we make it? Maybe that's a better approach. Is that we construct it, and then we let the integration get we let it have shared access to it. See lifetimes? Have any fun lifetime errors yet? Actually, I've been doing better with lifetimes. Some of the things that still scare me are the fill in the blank context, because I have trouble. Actually, I don't even know if I need that here, do I? Maybe that's superfluous. I think I copied that from somewhere else where they're explicit about it. I think because there's only one other borrow, it's implied, right? Yeah. Here. A squared confirms it. Forgot where else I saw that. There was somewhere where it needed to be. Okay, it must not have been in my code. These are just implementations of it. I think it was in one of the libraries I was looking at. They declared it, and I'm like, that still kind of scares me because I have a hard time understanding why it's needed, and that's otherwise I'm pretty comfortable with lifetimes now. Actually, have your IDE set up to give you lifetime inlay hints all the time. So you see, like every time there's a borrow, you'll see like a inlay hint for some like take A or something there, even though it's all implied now. That probably makes early learners of Rust more comfortable, right? Back in the days where you had to annotate every single borrow. Oh, here's where it was. That is necessary there, right? You have to have some lifetime, but it can be implied, so we don't have to name it. And I don't remember what lifetime that is. I suppose it is just implied from the context in which this is used. I think that's what it is, right? Because I think it's because this on event also had it. Yeah. Okay, so here's an example of a lifetime where I don't really understand what's going to be filled in here, because we have two other borrows. Does that implication mean that it goes with the borrow on this overall type? Because these two could have different lifetimes, right? So which lifetime is that? I don't know. Using the param name as a lifetime name, it ends up looking kind of redundant, though, right? I I don't know if I'd like that because I kind of hate seeing so much redundancy. Go back to where the error was. There's no error? No errors. Oh, right. That's what I was doing. I wanted to dispense with this get context because I didn't like the fact that it's just peeking into internal state. So, I'm just going to nix it right now. So we're going to get rid of get context. We're going to assume the integration is sharing a context with us, and that main is going to own it instead. So that means that I shouldn't need to do that, but that means that this needs to exist somewhere. Right now it exists in the integration, so let's move it out. So we'll get rid of the get context, and instead of it being, see, it already is shared. So, but instead of creating it here, let's pass it in. Egui context shared context. I don't know why some days I'm just really bad at spelling. Hey, Nightshade dude, how are you doing? I know it's been 84 years, I know. So many years. Oh, buddy. All the stars and planets have finally aligned to let me stream again. Mostly it was a combination of chaos of summer, being indecisive about what to stream, and new computer, and my setup being kind of needing to be organized. Hey there, Mr. Sir. How are you doing? We brought out our lurker extraordinaire, Mr. CM Griffing. Thank you, Nightshade dude. Your goal has been accomplished. So where the integration is constructed, we're going to want to, oh, my clipboard didn't have what I thought it would have in it. Cut, go back over here, because we need it before the integration is created, because we're going to pass it in. Egui context clone to give it a reference. This needs to why do I call it get? Why did I call it get? Oh, it's created here? Oh, right. So it goes with the window. Yeah, okay. So if I need to back up. I don't give it to the get ego integration. I give it to when I create the window at the very start. So up here. Pass it there, pass it there. Just put it on both right now. So this moves up to here. So we create the egui context, then we pass it to the window implementation, and then we retain our own reference for use later. CTX, right? Or should I just leave the full name? I think I do prefer the full name rather than the abbreviation. Put an image of why your ID looks like, what your ID looks like on trivial function Discord for when you get to that. Okay. He led Prime poorly. The ogre was 100% on purpose. Okay, that's something I missed, so I don't know what you're talking about, but that's fine. Is that an unsafe block without a safety comment? I didn't see any unsafe code. Did I have one? Only because full tick needs a whole lot of unsafe code. Oh no, that's not full tick. It's wgpu. It's unsafe. Why? Because we're giving it a raw window handle, I think. Raw window handle must be a valid object. Must remain valid until the return surface is dropped. Yeah, this is one of the few wgpu rough spots I felt. That in order to create a surface with it, with a raw handle, you have to use an unsafe function. But I was assured by the tutorial that I ran that it's okay. I heard that Prime was playing Baldur's Gate 3 with like 250 people watching, which is pretty crazy. All right, let me not get too distracted. Okay, I need to give this context, RC context. Okay, I am giving it to the new, right? Yes, right here. And then I'm storing it there. So I need to do the same thing in the full tick context. That's to make that compile. Right here. And we're not going to, actually we are going to do something with it. We're not going to create one ourselves. And then we can get rid of this get context so we don't need that anymore. All right, now we're all building. It's never used. Not used now might be needed later. We'll just remove it for now so that we don't need to clone it. So it cleans that up a bit. And let me make sure I didn't break anything. Cool, still working. Yeah, so this is my test UI that I have so far. Ooh, I hear some noise out there. Oh no, my robot vacuum cleaner ran over something. Good thing my son's there to fix it. Start hearing this noise and it's like, oh, robot vacuum cleaner ate a cat toy. It needs help. Okay, so full output is take the context, run the integration, the input from the integration, and then to build the UI, we're taking the context and drawing the overlay. That looks nicer to me now. Okay. This is probably a good point to check things in, right? So basically I moved the egui context out of the integration and into main. So that's what I'm going to say. Move egui context out of integrations. Back to main. Oh, a little over, but no one's going to notice, right? You didn't see me go one character over. It didn't happen. Okay, that was one thing I wanted to accomplish, is clean up that section of code. And at the same time, I think I made the integration look a little nicer, right? It only has one method, which is to take the input out. Takes the input out of the state and gives it to us. And then we use that to feed it to the context, right? This is used internally, so we're all good there. Okay. I think the second thing I wanted to do was everywhere I have a blank line, I wanted to split these off into other functions to refactor this function because it's too long. Reported to the 80 column, please. No! Actually, it's 60 columns for the subject line of a git commit, right? 80 columns for the body, 60 columns for the summary. Yeah, it puts it in red. It makes you feel bad that you went over the line. Or is it 50? What do I have it set to? 50. You're right. It's 50. And the body's 72, not 80. Yeah, it's like 3 words. It really forces you to be concise. 2 words if it's in German, a squared. 3 words for every other language. Okay, so let me think about. It's too concise and not useful. Well, one might think, does anyone ever read these summary lines later? I mean, there's a nice XKCD comic about it. I found that I hardly ever read these, but when I do, I kind of give my past self credit if I wrote something good. And I get frustrated at my past self if I was too lazy. So I guess it depends on how often you need to go back and look at your checking comments. More important, I think, if you're working with other people. Less important if it's solo. All right, so this is one thing we're doing. Hold on. We dive into Git history for 10-year-old tests that are broken. You're the first person to ever look at this. Yeah, that's a good point. That's probably where you would want to see it, right? I think the first goal is to come up with a word, a function name that describes what we're doing in each of these steps. So what are we doing here? We're doing anything with this output after we use it at the very end to present. Okay, so we do need to keep a reference to that. And this, what about this view? We only use it to begin the render pass. Yeah, but that's a little bit later. So we do want the output, the view, and the encoder, right? Encoder's probably used in a lot of places. It's used to submit to the queue, it's used to begin the render pass, and it's used by egui to update buffers. Okay, so we need all 3 of those things. So I'm thinking we want a function that's going to return those 3 things. And what it uses to get them is it uses the surface and it uses the device. What are we doing here? What is this? I guess we're setting up for a render pass, right? So let's take this code, refactor, extract a function. Actually, it just did the work that I just did. It figured out what 2 things it needed and what 3 things it's returning. And it gave it a fun name. Is Rust good for numerical mathematical programming? I don't know about that. Rust is better, I think, for systems level programming, like what you'd use C for. And I wouldn't think C is a go-to language for numerical or math processing. Nice for data processing, but is that A squared? Are you completely unbiased? I tend to think that if we like a language like Rust, we tend to be kind of biased and say it's nice. No, it's not. It's an unbiased opinion. Okay. Yeah, I just don't know. I tend to think that Rust is maybe not the best for numerical and math process programming, but I'm not an expert in that field, so I wouldn't say what to use instead. No, you are biased, right? So just when you ask, is Rust good for blank? If you ask that question to someone who really loves Rust, you're probably going to get a biased answer, and it probably is going to be a yes. You should be skeptical. So just think of Rust as a great alternative to C. And then there's a lot of stuff you can look up about what C is good and bad at, and probably the same applies to Rust. There's some libraries for numerical methods, but it's not super mature. So that's true. So one measure if a language is good is, does it have a nice body of library support for it? So there you go. So maybe it's not the best. Maybe it will be in some years from now when it gets more mature. Okay, so although it is a fun name, we want to rename that. And I had thought of this as setup, render setup. Render setup. And I really don't like a tuple, unless the types are all specific. In this case, they are specific, so maybe it's fine. We don't actually need these prefixes, right? I think we already imported that. No, I didn't import that. Well, we might as well import it. These are pretty unique to wgpu, so I don't mind importing them. Nice how it's a free function. It doesn't depend on our state at all, right? So we'll keep it like that. Okay, but we do have a problem here. Then once requirement to derive if and once comes from here. Wait, what? So we can only call the closure once because of what reason? Because it moves the variable surface out of its environment. What are we doing with surface? Oh, because it got moved here. Right. Is the refactoring thought that we were going to move it? We're not going to move, we're just going to borrow it. Back where we use it up here, we got to borrow, and then that should fix the problem. We can't move it out. If we move it out, then the closure can only be called once. Thus the FN ones. Well, in general, when someone says numerical / mathematical, that means like number crunching. Like algorithms that do large scale operations with many numbers in them. So maybe finance, maybe fluid. It could be any of those, right? And are they that different? I suppose they have other requirements, right? So maybe we're talking about like a cross section of the common requirements of all those. A borrowed RC is interesting. What would you suggest to do alternatively? We can't consume the reference. We just have to. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, we don't need to actually do that, right? I can shorten that. It should deref it for me. Yeah, it's just, I didn't write that. You have to remember, the refactoring automation wrote that for me. Yeah, and this doesn't need to be mutable. So it was mutable before, but now it doesn't need to be because it becomes mutable there, right? Yeah, the automation both took away the borrow and it kept the RC around it, which we don't need. Thank you for pointing that out, though. Yeah, we don't want to clone the RC that's not needed. We just need to borrow it, like briefly, to basically unpack, get the output in its view and an encoder from the device and the surface. All right. So that one line is done. So this already is one line. The goal is for this closure to be readable by every line doing something specific. So this does render setup. This runs the egui context. Can I make that more readable? Not really. We could give it, it would just be a one-line function. We could give it a nice name. So we get an output with 1, 2, 3 inputs, right? The context, the integration layer, and the overlay. I don't know. Let's experiment with what that might look like. Refactor function. It has another fun name. So I'll learn from my last overlooking it last time and remove the RC direct immediately. Does that need to be sized? I don't think so, because it's just a borrow, right? And this, we do want to mutably borrow it. Okay. So here we need to do this magical thing and borrow the overlay mutably. Here we go. Then I can dispense with the let. Get rid of the semicolon. I think it's worth it because this is complex enough, and we can have the name reinforce what we're doing. So what are we doing here? We're drawing the egui with this, right? So although I love the name fun name, let's call it we're not actually drawing. We're processing the input and producing the output. So maybe egui process egui would be a good name. So given the context, the integration, and the overlay, we're going to get the output that we're going to need to draw. Hey there, Endorn. How are you today? Endorn, I was thinking of you when I was going to start streaming. I saw that it was still nighttime in your area of the world. So although it does narrow down, I'm not going to dox you or anything, but I'm like, let's wait until it's at least past sunrise for Endorn before we start. How's the keyboard build? It's great. I love it. I actually made a second one that I use for work. Yeah, see, I waited until my international clock said that the sun had risen in your part of the world, and I'm like, okay, we're good to go. Is that Copilot doing autocomplete? No, I think it is just Rust Analyzer doing the autocomplete, just like what Stripe Monkey said. The Copilot would probably give us more elaborate completions. Okay, so the next block, this is like egui specific, right? This is like taking the output of egui and basically digesting it for use with the wgpu. So this is using this renderer, which we got from a different integration level. So instead of integrating with the windowing layer, we're integrating with wgpu. Refactor that. I should just started with that, right? We're refactoring and then we're cleaning up what the automation does. Okay, this takes a lot of junk. Why did it do that? It couldn't figure out the type? Does it even need the surface config? It does. Jeez. Is this even worth refactoring out if it has so many arguments? I almost feel like since these are all related, if we put it into a struct, we could make this function in the implementation of the struct and reduce the argument count. Maybe that's the direction we want to go. You can just listen to you while you're waking up, but you'll have to get in the car and drive to work. You won't be able to see my code, but I guess we all have to make sacrifices. Are any of those arguments derived from each other? No, these are all independent. Yeah, I was thinking about a struct. I think I'll start with this. I need to fix this. It doesn't know what the output is. Not the output. Misspoke. It doesn't know what the surface config is. We know from inlay hints that it's a surface configuration. So let's put that in there. Surface configuration. Actually, does it need to be used afterwards? Yes, we're just borrowing it. Okay. Okay, we don't need to retain make a reference to make a increment the reference counts on any of these. We just need to borrow them. Okay, so this will do outside. That's probably why it got confused, right? So what I'll do is I'll take that. Oh, it doesn't need to be mutable. We just need to borrow immutably. That's better. So up here, we do that. Don't need the rest of that line. Okay. borrow and a borrow, right? Mismatched types. Expected a reference and it's kind of scrolling off the screen. Found a ref. Isn't that another one of those magical combinations needed? It like that, but then this is broken down here. Full output. Oh, this is actually moving it out, right? I think this does this consume the output? So we could just push it in. Do we use the full output any other time? Okay, I do use it down here, but we can move that out first, right? Or can we? I feel like we should move it out before we call the function. The shapes and the textures delta set. Yeah, let's do that. And it can own both of those. So that will go there. That will go there. I just need to get the types correct now. What do we think those types are? The vector of ePaint clipped shapes. Let me just assemble those types in prep for actually, because start changing this, I lose my Rust Analyzer help. This is a vector, so these are kind of complicated types, aren't they? Okay, so instead of getting the full output, we're getting the shapes as a vector of clipped shapes. And then we're getting the, I guess, new textures or updated textures. The vector of top tuples of texture IDs and image deltas. Then I get rid of that, and then I use shapes here. And we use updated textures down here. I think that's re-exported, right? Yes. Or no, not. I just didn't have it complete. These need to be imported. Okay. Gonna complain about the argument count. Too many arguments, no! We don't need this borrow, because we're already borrowing it. Don't need that. Hey there, Togglebit. How are you doing? Sorry, I haven't been catching up with chat. Are any of those arguments derived from each other? Oh, I already answered that. Borrow is making you think ref cell. It is ref cell. I needed some interior mutability there. Because somewhere else we have to mutate it, but we can't use a mutable reference to get to it. How we're all doing? We're all doing great. I'm glad that I can keep this stream going. I was worried that I would stream once yesterday and then like not be able to continue today. It's procrastinating here. You're trying to muster up the energy to work on your code. You know what helps mustering up energy? Is just hit that start stream button, and then you get chat to help you muster up the energy. Hey, chat, I need some motivation, and then everyone will flock to you and start bringing you the energy. Is this telling me I don't need to use that magical combination? Try this. Borrow the borrow? Really? That seems odd to me. Is it because borrow... Don't we get a ref? Then why did we need to do that in the first place? It was complaining that the types were mismatched. Is the type wrong down here? No, it's the surface config, right? It's a borrowed surface config. So why do I need to borrow after I call borrow? That's not true, Andorn. Stream Elements is always watching. So is Commander... What's the guy's name? Commander something. I forgot his name, but he's always watching. And Raimu is watching, even if you don't think he is. Think that there would be an auto deref, the star is implicit. So you think that it's doing that for me, but we still need that part, at least? That we do need to do this magical combination of deref and then, or ref and then deref, or is it deref and then ref? It's deref and then ref again to basically to get the correct type of the reference. But we can abbreviate it to that because it's auto derefed, right? Is that what the warning said? It's auto derefed anyway, so you don't need to do it manually. Deref, which would have been done by auto deref. Okay, yeah, that's what it's telling me. And Doran, what's your next stream going to be about? We can advertise it now. More people will watch. You can also post on some Discord, or maybe more than one Discord, that, hey, the legendary Endoran is about to start streaming. I'm sure you'll get, like, a lot more viewers that way. Okay, we'll fix the too many arguments later. I just wanted to get this down to one line, and then think of a good name for this. So this breaks down the shapes, and then what? What is the primitives? Okay, we use it to update the vertex and index buffers, and we return them back out, presumably because we need them later. Right, because then we draw them later. Okay, so this is like preparing to draw, right? For egui. This is like digesting the egui output. Why do we need the context to tessellate the shapes? Maybe that part should be brought out so that I can get rid of one argument. Because we don't use the context for anything else, right? Yeah. Okay, so let's move that out. So then one less argument. We don't need the context anymore. Oh, then we don't need the shapes either. Even better. We just do that. So that's maybe I was over refactoring. We don't need those. And oh no, we do need the primitives. We need the primitives. So I need to pass the primitives in instead of the shapes. Okay. What's the type of the primitives? Vec flipped primitive. So borrow the you can borrow the primitives, but they're ours, so you can't have them. For some reason, that's hard for me to type. Vec clipped primitive. Import, please. Okay. It's actually no longer warning me about the count. Mismatch types found reference to the same thing. Oh, had the type wrong. Whoa. Borrow. Actually, then it doesn't need to be a vec, does it? Aha! I have learned something. My Rust is better. And we don't need to pass it back out. So we're just getting the screen descriptor back out. Why do we need the screen descriptor later? I will answer that in a moment. Mostly just I did the refactoring and I'm seeing where that leads me. So we get a screen descriptor out of doing our fun name function. Got 2 new followers. That's more followers than I've gotten today. So you must be doing something right, Endurin. Clippy's going to yell at me for making it reference to a slice. Yeah, I did fix it first. What did I do, though? I'm already past that and I forgot what I did. Clippy's looking for a timeout then? Ban Clippy? Clippy's our friend. Come on. We all love Clippy, right? Okay. Why do we need the screen descriptor back out? Oh, because it's used when we actually draw. So it needs the primitives and the screen descriptor. Maybe the screen descriptor should be moved out as well. I have a feeling this is not going to be doing much afterwards. Construct it there, and that uses the surface config. Yeah, I think this does go outside. Before I move it out though, let's screen descriptor. We're going to plan to add it as a replacement for surface config, right? Screen descriptor. Screen descriptor. And then we're going to import that. And then we're going to move this out. Pass it in up here. Okay. Hold on a sec. So I shouldn't need to actually return that because it's not ours. It has no return value. Great. What's going on here? What did I screw up there? Width untype. Oh, right. I need to borrow it. This. Is that what I was doing before? Yeah. And yeah, I wish there's some reason why I can't cut and paste from there. I just have to type it again. Full surface config borrow because it's in a ref cell. Yeah, no, it is weird that you can't select it. I think it's a bug or something one would expect, but just was never implemented. A reference to a vec can only be used to access read the elements. Yes, that's what I've learned. That it's better to just give a slice. Yeah, you're limiting yourself to be taking a reference to a vector. It has to be a vector. You can't have a non-vector. Yeah. What does read the elements? Index and select individual elements out of the vector, right? So using the index operation to copy out or reference an element of the vector. I think that's what he means. Yeah. Oh no, Strager. How are you? How was your stream? Thank you for bringing so many lovely people here. I know. Ew. We're doing GUI stuff. You want to see my awesome GUI? I actually don't even know if it'll run right now. But let's try it since everyone's here. How bad could it be, right? I got a warning, but that's okay. We're going to ignore the warning. Ooh, look at that. There's a QR code. I wonder what that QR code is. I want to scan it right now to see what it is. So, hello, Raiders. I am very rusty at streaming, and I also stream while I'm coding in Rust. So there you go. What I'm working on today is integrating egui, which makes this little UI. It's designed for adding UI elements to games, but I'm just using it as a convenient way to add user interface elements to what would otherwise just be a low-level graphics drawing program. So it doesn't do much. This is basically the hello world of graphics programming, drawing a triangle and making it use pretty colors. That's basically the very first program you'll end up writing if you're learning how to do any kind of graphics, whether it's OpenGL, DirectX, Metal, Vulkan, WebGL, all that stuff, right? So I started with that because I'm learning wgpu, which is a nice wrapper in Rust for all of those aforementioned lower level graphics libraries, right? So you write it in Rust once and I could run it on Vulkan or Metal or whatever, right? So started with that, and I'm like, I also want to play with egui because it lets me do user interface elements like this. And so integration is required between those two things, right? So a lot of my work today and yesterday has been working out that integration level. And then the third thing I want to work on after I get all these things nicely refactored and working well together is I'm going to add a physics engine to this, and we're going to play with like simulations that are rendered in a 3D view, all in Rust. So I'm just cleaning up most of the work that I was doing yesterday. But if you have questions, let me know. Look at all these chats from raiders who are mostly like oohed and awed with all of the cool stuff I'm doing, but that's fine. Not a clean build? No. A clean build will probably take an hour. Just kidding. Cool. Well, I hope you guys all enjoy being here, and thank you for the raid, Strogger. You had to go. That's fine. I understand. All right. So I'm in the midst of refactoring this huge function that is overly long. What I'm trying to do is have each line do something significant and have the name in yellow give a good idea of what we're doing. So render setup. We're setting up a view into our output with an encoder for the graphics engine based off of what surface we're drawing to and with what device. It's pretty self-explanatory. Then we're processing the egui, which is that GUI elements overlay. So it has a context and there's an integration between it and the windowing layer. We're taking those two things and then we're taking our overlay description, which is all imperative programming. I'll show you right here. It's basically saying, hey UI, I want a label, and then I want a button, and if that button's clicked, I want you to do this. And then here's another label, and a spinner. It's all imperative, right? We reconstruct the whole UI every pass. So we take all those, we take that, the context of egui and its integration with the windowing system, and we say, do your thing and give us the output to draw. And that output has the shapes in the geometries of what to draw, and then there's the textures that like have the which pixels to turn on what colors, like not just where the text is, but what letters to draw. That's a very layman's terms explanation of it. So process egui gives us that, and then we're going to take the shape, the geometry, and tessellate it, which means turn it into triangles. And with those, I should probably just call it triangles here. That'd be easier to understand, right? Egui triangles. So there are some triangles we get out. And then we're going to borrow the configuration of our surface and make a screen descriptor saying the size of our screen is this. This is the density of our display. And then I haven't given, this is the default name of a function that when you do the refactoring operation, so I haven't given it a correct name yet. But given all that stuff, the triangles, all the textures, screen descriptor, this renderer thing, the device, the Q encoder, we're doing something with that. What are we doing with it? We are going to the renderer and saying, update all the textures. And then we're going to say, update the vertex and index buffers. And this is all associated with egui. So I think maybe the name of this should be egui, like send to GPU, or like update GPU. There's probably a better name for it, but we're taking the things from egui and sending it to the GPU. How about we do this approach? We write a long name, we try to shorten it. Send egui updates to GPU. And specifically updates texture and buffer. So how do we shorten that? Sending egui texture and buffer updates to GPU. What's a shorter name for that? Like send egui data, maybe? I don't know, what do you guys think? Sadabutka. So basically take the first letter of every word and just cram it all together. I mean, it's not a terrible approach. Text buff update. Maybe turn it around and say update I don't know, render? The rendering actually is in a later step. We start a render pass, and then here's where the actual render happens. So I don't want to use the word render. It's like giving the GPU the data that it will use to do the render later, like a little bit later. Update textures and swap buffers. It's certainly smaller. So that's a good step. Update textures and swap. I'm not sure about the word swap though. It's really discarding the old buffer and replacing it with a new one. So it's like update textures and replace buffers, or maybe just update textures and buffers. Ooh, how about if I just remove those words? Update textures and of course I'm going to misspell and. But it has to have the word egui in there somewhere because this is very egui specific. How about update egui textures and buffers? Load data, like load egui data. Testeroni. I like your thinking, Endoran. Feel like you need an function name. It should be two functions, like a function for that and a function for that. Maybe because I have so many damn arguments, right? Image delta is only the updated textures is only used for the first half, and screen descriptor is only used for the second half. Maybe the solution then is that we break this into two functions and remove the word and. Already two functions. Yeah, well, this one does have a loop. Yeah, I'm thinking that you guys are right. We're doing two different things here. We should have two functions. So why don't we just do that right now? We'll make two functions. And we'll just duplicate everything. And then see what we didn't need for this other function. We'll just put a 2 there, because it's only going to last us like a few moments. Okay, so we didn't need the primitives of the screen descriptor for this. Cool. And we're not getting any of the other help because now the compiler is very mad at me. So I need to fix that. So it was what? Textures render device queue texture. So it was these two, right? Oh, but I can't just delete it. I need to duplicate this and call step 2, which again, temporary name. Don't hate me. Yeah, it doesn't like that because we moved it out. It doesn't actually need that, so we're gonna get rid of it. And I can get rid of it here and it won't be mad at me anymore. Okay, and then there are more things we can cut out of here, right? This doesn't need the encoder. So we don't need that argument. I think we're making progress. We're cutting this down. Don't need to borrow that. So this is unnecessary. I can just move this completely out, right? And just cut that right out and paste it in place of this one. I just need to add the borrows back in here. Mute. And then primitives is triangles. Borrowed. And borrow the screen descriptor, right? So I don't need that function at all because it's just one line. Okay, I think this is getting better. So then the name, if we're just updating the textures, we can get rid of the and buffers part. Update. And I forgot the I in egui. There we go. All right. What do you guys think? Update egui textures. Updated textures, render, device, and queue. We're just iterating through those textures and telling the renderer to update them. I like it. See if it reads any better. Screen descriptor we don't need until this next step, right? Same with the config. That can move down to there. Okay, so render setup, process egui, get the triangles, update the textures. These can be done in different orders, right? We don't need the triangles until we're updating the buffers, so we can move that down so that kind of groups better. So after process egui, then update the textures, get the surface config to get the screen descriptor. Do we need the surface config for anything else? Don't think so. So maybe this could be put into another function that just gives me a screen descriptor? I'm terribly behind in the chat, so let me back up and read this. Okay, yeah, so hopefully we're on the right track. It's already 2 functions, now it's back to 2 functions. When you stream rest, you don't have competition, only unconverted heathens. Maybe, toggle bit, maybe. EGU refers to the, yeah, that's ego. No, but it's the I that was missing. Iron oxide? But rust could be other oxides, right? You might have, what? Isn't copper oxide like copper rust? Or I don't know. Yeah, you haven't seen me since March because I only streamed twice in March, and before that it was like last year sometime. Yep, you got it. It's because I've had, I have a new computer. The summer was chaos with the kids. I have a new cat. A lot of things have changed. So it's starting to settle down and I feel comfortable streaming again. You like the old version if they need to be called together in that order? Yeah, but I've already moved them around, right? So now we're doing the textures up here and we're doing the buffers down here. So I've already moved them apart. Nothing of value to say? Oh, come on, Togglebit. You guys always have something valuable to say. That's why I have some of your names on my keyboard. Can't see them because they're in such tiny print, but my keyboard says thanks to, and Stripe Monkey's name is on that list, along with Endorn and others. Because you guys have valuable input. By the way, anyone who doesn't know, this is like the subject of last year for me. I built my own keyboard, which is right here. It's an abomination of 36 keys. I love it. It's inspired by the Korn keyboard. You can look that up too. And that's why I make lots of typing mistakes, because it's probably going to take me 10 years to learn this keyboard, like it took me 10 years to learn QWERTY. How can you have valuable input if you don't even know Rust? That's the thing, Zippy. So sometimes experts get painted into a corner, so to speak, by just like recycling their own knowledge from past experience to future ones, but they never incorporate new ideas because they think they know everything. So sometimes what's really valuable is someone who knows nothing about the subject saying either asking a question about it or saying some out of the box comment or question that makes the expert pause and say, do I really know this to an expert level, or do I just think I'm an expert and I stopped learning? So I like to hear questions and comments from people, even if they don't think they have valuable input, because that can force me to think differently about what I thought I already knew, and maybe I learned something new or a different approach to it. So even if you don't know it, if you just like say, hey, what if you do this? There's a chance that you'll make me think, oh, there is something to that. Maybe you didn't intend it a certain way, but it helped break me out of some kind of like stuck way of thinking. Copperus is usually called patina. So is rust always iron oxide? Hey there, Dr. Padawan. Most people just pretend to know rust. I try to think of myself as always learning, because when you stop learning, you're not really growing as a person anymore. So I don't like that idea. Okay, let me go back and review this. So render setup. Maybe that should be set up for rendering. No, that name's okay. Process the egui. Update its textures. Get a surface. Right, this is what I was going to refactor next. I think surface config is only used to make that screen descriptor. Yeah, so we can refactor that away. Let's do that. Refactor this out to a function. Yeah, it doesn't know the type. That's the problem, right? Let's help it. We'll tell it that it is a borrowed It's a reference to a surface configuration. And this line kind of goes away because we're going to take it and take the right-hand side of it and give it as the argument to the function. And what's this problem? Did I not get the type right? Oh, right, this needed that funny extra borrow, even though it seems redundant because we already call the borrow, but for some reason I don't quite understand. I think it's because the type of the reference is different. It needs to do an automatic dereference and then make a reference again. Fix the type. Right, and then this is just telling me you don't even need to be redundant. You can just say, you can type correctly on my keyboard. Just say that. I think then it's obvious this is called make screen descriptor. Right? So then back up here, we make a screen descriptor. We make the triangles by tessellating the shapes. We update the buffers. Okay, so now we're down to actually drawing. So I already know what I want to call this. I want to call it draw. First I need to right click, do vector function. We're going to call it draw. So we're making a render pass from the encoder. We're doing a bunch of drawing, and then we're dropping the render pass. So the render pass is completely encapsulated in there. Does this look right? We're going to use an encoder. We're given a view. We're given the triangle model. We're giving the egui render. We're getting the triangles and the screen descriptor, and we're using that to do all the drawing. So what could go wrong, right? I think the problem is this is going to tell me that I moved something out. Yeah. So we moved something out, so then the closure can't be called a second time. So what did I accidentally move out? That would be the triangle model, right? Because we need that every loop. This one we make every loop. This one needs to be reusable, so I think that's probably it. Then I got to actually just borrow the triangle model, not pass it in. And we're good now. Let me catch up with chat. Technically, the green color of copper is rust, but usually gets a different name. It's to be a special rust, right? Have you tried any other GUI libs in Rust like IamGUI? No, but I have tried full tick in Rust, which is a wrapper for full tick, the C++ library, right? And I have that in here as an alternative window host. And it's incomplete because I've mostly been working on the winit side of things. Full tick is like a full GUI library, but it's not pure Rust, right? It's a C++ library. I think IamGUI, isn't that the same thing? It's not pure Rust. So what attracted me to use egui was two things. Another streamer named Musin was tinkering around with egui, and it looked pretty cool to me. And the second thing was that it's pure Rust. So I'm kind of into that thing. Is Tori still popular for making GUI? I don't know. I've never actually used it. Does VS Code seem better than it used to, like over the past couple of years? I think it's pretty cool. I have no complaints these days. You basically customize it with the plugins that you want, and I like everything. Apparently, that's why I have 31 installed. But if you don't install any plugins, it's just a bare bones editor, right? But then, hey, like C++, install that plugin. You like CMake, install that one. You like using LLDB, install that one. And after a while, you end up installing all the tools that you use anyway, and it becomes more and more integrated. I like the idea that you're not forced into a level of integration. If you don't have anything installed, it's just a bare bones editor. There's no integrations. If you put all the plugins that exist and install them, now you have Eclipse. I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh at my own stupid jokes, but you can certainly make VS Code terrible by just installing all the plugins. I think the happy middle is you install the plugins that you actually find are helping you out and are making you more efficient and doing repetitive, tedious tasks for you. And then you kind of start to enjoy things because you can focus on what you like doing and not. It's like I don't have to focus on like whether I put a tab or a space here, or if I put an extra space here, or enter keys. If I mess up, I can just hit save and boom, it's fixed for me. I love it. I don't have to worry about the indentation at all. That's a feature of the built-in formatter when you install Rust Analyzer, and that's your language server, right? And not just VS Code has this. I'm sure Vim has it as well. Just looks different. I have never had performance issues with VS Code. Maybe years ago it had bad performance. I don't know. I've been using it for like 3 or 4 years and haven't had any problems with it. Highlights the indentation level you're on. I think one of my plugins is doing that, but I'm not sure. Color scheme. I'm just using one of the defaults. Well, how do I see what? I don't remember. How do you see that? Was that theme? Color theme? Yeah, that's how you do it. See, I'm doing dark modern. I did customize a bunch of stuff in the settings. As you can see, I love customizing things. So I customized the font. I turned on font ligatures. I don't know if you noticed that, but I think it's kind of cool. I like saying white space because I hate it when there's like a tab hidden in there amongst the spaces. I like the editor rule, which is on this line on the right, is my 79 character ruler. Yeah, but again, just like the extensions, there's a happy medium. You don't want to like override everything. I override just the things that I end up finding annoying until I adjust them, basically. Yeah, so just using the dark modern, I didn't customize the theme at all. Feels like use 1% of the features of a lot of the plugins. Yeah, that kind of sucks, right? Because you kind of, if you went through the effort of having the plugin installed, you kind of want to make pretty good use of it. It's sort of a waste if you're not using 99% of a plugin. I just love the fact that I can see this as an arrow instead of a minus and a greater than. I forget who I was watching. Maybe it was Chris Griffin, but someone had ligatures turned on. I'm like, that looks awesome. I like that. Okay, back to what I was doing. I guess we don't need this import anymore, so we get rid of that. Okay. Right, I had called it draw, and we can get rid of the space now because the spaces are marking places where I want to extract functions, right? It's still long, but we do have to do a long recipe of things, right? And the argument count is pretty heavy. They're heavy because they're needing a lot of things because they might be doing too much, but if I were to do less, I'd have more function calls. So there's like a balance in trying to strike here between readability and well, I'm trying to make it readable. But yeah, readability and verbosity. If I do too few things per function call, I'll just have more function calls and it'll be too verbose. All right, so drawing. I kind of don't like the haphazard order in which I have all the arguments. I kind of feel like I should group the triangle model with the triangles like into its own structure. Like here are the things that we draw, and then the tools we draw with are the renderer, and the encoder and the view into the surface. I could at least reorder those two to put the models together. Here are the things we're drawing, and here are the tools we're drawing with. Models come first, and then I kind of inclined to group them together in a structure somewhere. Did I mess that up? I did, I messed it up. Now I can't even find the function. Triangle model and then the egui triangle. What did I do wrong here? Okay, undo. See. Oh, I deleted something. Triangle model and the GUI triangles there. Cool. That fixed it. Yeah, I kind of feel like these should be grouped together, right? Because these are the things we're drawing. These are the drawing tools. And this description is sort of like describing the bounds in which we're drawing. If I group together like encoder and renderer, would that help? It would help only here, right? What about like device and encoder? Device and queue maybe should be grouped together because they're always passed around together. Right? Okay, well here render setup doesn't need it. I need to think about that some more. Like how I want to reduce the argument count here by grouping things that are used together into structures and give them names like drawing. Like this would be like models, and these would be like drawing tools, like that. Okay, let me finish this though. So submit and then present. Those I think can just stand alone, that's fine. And what about this last one? This last one we can refactor out because it's similar to the update buffers, right? Or update egui textures. This should be like free unused GUI textures or something. To refactor function. Free unused egui textures. Okay. We can consume the out. Actually, no, I don't want that. I should be passing this directly. So that's the textures delta. The type again? Can I just copy it from the other one? Ooh. Where am I? I'm confused. Okay, there's where we are. Yeah, I should click on that and see what his type is. A vector of texture IDs. Go back. What to name it? Textures? Why is the dog growling outside at me? Do you need something? Do you want to appear on stream, or you just need to use the bathroom? I'll be right back. I guess she wanted to say hi to you guys. She's like right outside the office, like making little sounds like. She wanted to say hi. Do you want to tell chat something? No? You have nothing to say now? She has nothing to say. Maybe she does need to use the bathroom. I'll be right back. The dog did want to go out, but look who wanted to come in. New kitty. She wants to say hi, and she also wants me to let her down. Aw, now she's walking behind the monitor. She's probably going to chew on the cables. I think she wanted to be let in because her food and water are actually in the office now. I don't think I haven't figured out what treats my cat actually likes. She just likes to kind of. Okay, now she's playing around with something. Hold on. She's a 7-month-old kitten, so she plays with things she's not supposed to, and I have to lock them away. All right, sorry about the cat break there, and the cat and dog break. Textures goes. We're gonna need to pass it, so that goes here, and then. Yeah, the order of these functions is all a mess, right? Where did it go? Here it is. Textures. Cool. The mutable, this needs to be borrowed mutably instead of consumed. Then, like that. Cool. Let me fix the order of these functions, right? Let's move this closer to update. Process should probably come before, render should even come even before that. I could probably group the egui ones together somewhere. Render setup probably belongs first. Draw probably should go last. Okay, is this in a logical order? So there's the render setup, then making a screen descriptor, process egui, updating the textures, freeing the unused textures, drawing, and that's it. I like that order. Okay, now does this make sense? Render setup using a surface and device, we get an output view and an encoder. The encoder we're going to be mutating. Then process the egui, we have the context, its integration layer, and our overlay, and we process that to get the output. Then we update the egui textures using the render device enqueue. Then we make a screen descriptor from the surface configuration. Then we tessellate the output shapes to get the triangles. Then we update the buffers from egui using device queue encoder. Okay, I don't like the order of this. This should be triangles first, right? Update buffers using those triangles, this device enqueue and encoder, and this is screen descriptor. Right, so triangles should go first. Oh, I can't order that. That's not my class. It has to be in that order. So never mind. You can only do that to my own functions. Oh, hey Adam. Wait, you're rating me now? Don't you start streaming around now? My times are all screwed up. I thought you stream later and I would be rating you, my friend. Why are you rating me? Well, hello there. I'm not a pixel artist. I'm a Rust programmer. I watch Adam stream a lot because I'm not very good at pixel art and I would like to learn a few things. I would like to hope that it goes both directions and pixel artists out there wouldn't mind learning about programming in other languages. I know Adam does a lot of C# programming. I like Rust, which is kind of like C with some tighter restrictions added on for safety. That's my one-sentence description. Just moved to a new place back in Australia. Oh, nice. So right now it's winter time for you, right? Summertime up here, wintertime down where everyone stands upside down. So yeah, today I'm just cleaning up some code I started yesterday, or started before, and kind of wrote a bunch yesterday. Really cold, yeah. It's freaking hot everywhere else. So yeah, not much else to say about that, right? Yeah, thank you for using the commands. My bot will help describe it. So wgpu, if I run my test program here, is like a Rust library that lets you do graphics programming no matter if you're using OpenGL or Metal or Vulkan or WebGL, all those different graphics libraries that are out there that some of them you use on Linux, others you use on Windows, others you use on the Mac. wgpu actually runs everywhere, and you write the code once and it can run on any of those platforms. And it's all in Rust, so that's why I'm learning it. The triangle, the colored triangle you see here is kind of like the hello world for graphics library programming. So when you first make your own, you're making your own game engine, for example, and you want to do your own rendering of the graphics in your game at a very low level, and you're learning that library, this is the first thing you'll do, drawing a single triangle, right? So that's wgpu. So on top of that, we're adding these like more traditional user interface elements, like buttons and spinners and text, and that's generated with a different library called egui. And those two integrate together along with the window that surrounds both of them, using a couple different integration libraries. So I'm playing around with wgpu, egui, and various integration libraries that glue them together. Is there an IMGUI equivalent? egui is kind of like an alternative to IMGUI that is inspired by it. So I could have used IMGUI as an alternative to egui. Yeah. See you, Adam. So yeah, I've been cleaning up those integrations, and right now I've been focusing on the main render loop, or the redraw loop, I guess you call it, because this is a function that's going to be called whenever we're asked to redraw the screen, right? So yeah, let me go over it once again. Just also helps me to make sure I didn't miss anything. So whenever we're asked to redraw the screen, this is what we do. We're going to get a copy to the reference to certain things that we keep around every loop. So the surface is what we're drawing to. The device is the graphics processor, right? The GPU. Surface config tells us how big our screen is. Info overlay is how we describe our interface. So that looks like this. So it's called, what is it? Let me use my own command to see what it's called. It's an immediate mode GUI. So immediate mode meaning where we use imperative style programming, right? It's not declarative, it's imperative. We say, hey, UI, make this label. Now make a button. And if it's clicked, do that. And make another label, and make another label, and then make a spinner. So they're like commands to the UI saying, add this, add that. And then when you add this, and later if it's clicked, or if it's being clicked now, do this, right? It's all in the moment. There's no like retaining of state, really. We're reconstructing everything every frame. So that's why it's called an immediate mode GUI. What resources am I using? The main resource I use to start out with was MIUI yet? What's it called? My GUI? Or is it Are We GUI? Are We GUI yet? So Are We GUI yet is a kind of a launch point if you're interested in doing user interfaces in Rust. And they kind of go like, here are all the libraries that are out there, and sort of synopsis of each one. So egui is listed there, and fulltick is listed there, and wgpu is down here somewhere. I don't see it. I think wgpu is considered even lower level than user interface, but like Tori was mentioned before on stream, right? So this is a good starting point for learning about the different resources that are out there. Yeah, Are We GUI yet? So there are other sites like this. If like there's Are We Game Yet? If you're interested in like, is Rust suitable for making games yet? You can click that and you can see, well, there's not much there for game programming, but here are some libraries that are out there in Rust that'll do stuff like AI and shaders and scripting languages, ECS, right? Entity component system, VR, game engines, math, stuff like that. And the idea is that as the ecosystem for Rust matures for different areas like game development or user interface, these pages, these landing pages, will be updated with more and more resources. That's where I start, and then kind of like the go-to for just if you want to look up if Rust libraries have something is I like lib.rs, but there's also was it crates.rs or cargo.rs? I can't remember the name of it, but I like lib.rs. You can type in something like, let's say you wanted to see SHA-256. Oh, look, here's a library that we want. Here's the GitHub repo where it's checked in. And here's its API reference. So you can look at what are the functions you can call and what are the traits that are involved. So I like lib.rs for searching for if there's a Rust library out there to do something that you're looking for. Those are good starting points for resources. Yeah, here's our immediate mode UI, and where was it? Here is where we're going to let egui consume that and generate output, which is a combination of what textures need to be given to the GPU and what geometry we need to draw. So first we update the textures, we basically copy them to the GPU. Then we make a screen descriptor. Actually, we don't need the screen descriptor here. This can be moved down. Oh, both of these are needed for the next function. Yeah, so we need a screen descriptor and the triangles. And with those two things, we can update the inputs to the drawing calls later, like the vertex and index buffers. If you've used graphics libraries before, you know what I mean. And then we do all the drawing. And then all the work that we've set up with all the stuff that's come before, we submit it to the GPU. This is all like queued up in advance, and then when it's ready, we just say, boom, GPU, do all that stuff. And then present does the swap on screen between the off-screen buffer and the on-screen buffer. And then we free the textures we don't need anymore. And that happens 60 times per second. Yeah, one of my goals tonight was to make this somewhat more readable than when I started. It's still kind of lengthy. I could work on kind of combining these parameters to these functions down to like fewer parameters that are more descriptive, like triangle model and egui triangles. They're two different things. One is the GUI elements, the other one is that big colored triangle that I was drawing. But they kind of go together as like things we want to draw. Kitty wants to say hello again, I guess. She's like meowing and meowing and rubbing against the chair leg. Want to say hi? Okay, it's getting you're not purring loud enough to overcome the noise gate. You gotta purr louder. Probably wants me to let her out. Let her out of the office. Okay. I don't have a cat bed on the desk. The cat bed is in the other room, which is probably why she wanted me to let her out. The only reason I have the door closed right now is the Roomba's moving around making a lot of noise, and I kind of don't want it in here. I'll let it in here after the stream's over. Okay, I'm done cleaning up the main redraw function. Do I need to do anything else, or are we going to move on to the next task? I think I'm going to check this in. So click that button, and then I say git commit. We change the main, and I can actually review what the changes are this way. So the gist of it is there's all this junk here, and now it's kind of consolidated down, and instead we have a bunch of functions that have the different steps broken up. So it's refactor the redraw closure. All right. So I think done with refactoring for now. I can move on to the next kind of feature work. And that's that we have this cool spinner, but it only updates if I move my mouse, right? Stop moving my mouse, the spinner stops. It's kind of sad. I think the problem there is that when we have UI elements that are like updating on their own without mouse events, that egui has another channel, another way to tell us that you need to redraw after a certain amount of time. And right now we're not using that information. So first I need to find out where that is, and I have an idea of where. Once I get that information, then we have to feed it back into our window integration. Because this window integration here is where we actually call the redraw. So we redraw when we get an event from the window to say that it was requested. We can request to redraw in a couple places. Actually, there's 3 places. If egui tells us that we should repaint, we request a redraw. If our window gets resized, we request a redraw. And if the scaling factor for our window changes, then we request a redraw. So there's probably going to be a 4th place where we add this request redraw, and it'll be like if in the process of doing egui update, it says, hey, I need you to redraw in X seconds from now. We're going to want to set a timer, and when that timer expires, then we'll call request redraw, right? So first, I guess I need to find out where that is. And my idea is it's in the process egui here, which calls this run. Yeah, so it gives us back what? A full output. And that full output, right now we're using the shapes and we're using the textures delta. Yeah, so this is where it is, right? This repaint after. And if it's 0, it wants an immediate repaint. If it's greater than 0, it wants to be repainted at or before the specified duration elapses. So how am I going to get to that or use that? Okay, it's returned out of run, so I can at least go back 1 level back out. I accidentally update that. What am I doing? There we go. Good morning. How are you today? It's night for me and morning for a lot of people. Probably also in the middle of the night and in the middle of the day for other people. So process GUI also returns that full output. So we have it here. We pull out the texture. Okay, so what I can do is I can just check here, right? But how do we feed it back out? I know, redraw can return it. Right now we don't return anything from redraw, but we could return it, right? We could return the egui full output repaint after. That's a duration, right? Standard time duration. So this redraw, and we can specify that it returns that. So here's where the specification is, right? Redraw. We can say that that actually returns a duration that we will import. And then that'll allow us to return that duration. Then we have to actually reuse it at the caller site. Just starting work, drinking coffee? Let me know if you have any questions about what I'm doing. I kind of just like vocalizing my own thoughts as I'm working, and people are coming and going. So probably most people don't know what I'm doing. They just kind of like to see the code or hear my voice. But if you actually do have questions about the code, let me know and I'll try to answer them. So I changed the specification here to say redraw returns a duration. But this is an abstraction, like an interface description, and I have 2 implementations. So I need to go into those 2 implementations and update them. So handy thing is the Rust Analyzer plugin puts red squiggly lines everywhere I need to update. Okay, what's it saying now? Assumes more implied bounds below what? What? I don't know why it's saying that. But it probably has to do with some other error that I have. So I'm going to continue and then address that later. No, I have to address it now. I need to understand what this error means. Implement method assumes more implied bounds than the corresponding trait method. I actually don't even understand that. Why is it telling me that? Maybe duration is ambiguous. That's what it was. It was ambiguous. I needed to tell it what duration meant. Imported as standard time. So what it did there is it added this line to use standard time duration. I guess it didn't know what duration meant, and it gave me a weird error instead of sort of explaining what it meant. Where was I? Right here. So this redraw, right? It's used here. We're not using the return value, but we want to use the return value. So let redraw. What's the name of it? I already forgot what the name is. Back to main. What the heck is it? It's repaint after. Okay. So let repaint after equal redraw. So it's gonna redraw immediately, and it's gonna return us a duration, amount of time that, like, after that time has elapsed, we want to repaint again. So what we can do with a W init, I think they have timers, right? Look up in the manual for W init. How do you do a timer? I need W init. Where's my window for W? I don't have a window for W init. Apparently, I need to add one. Oh no, here it is. So do we have timer? Do we have like a timeout? How do we, oh, set wait timeout. Is that what we want? Wait until timeout is expired? Not right. So how do I set a timer? Guess this is where we go to Google. W init timer. See how someone else did this. Control flow. What's control flow? Oh, so control flow is the third argument to our event loop. So there's a set wait until. How does that come back out? I guess we'll look at the manual for that. Set wait until. Sets this to wait until. Yeah, but it doesn't explain what it's used for. Oh, when the current loop iteration finishes, suspend the thread until either another event arrives or the given time is reached. Useful for implementing efficient timers. Applications which want to render at the display's native refresh rate would instead use poll in the vsync functionality of the graphics API. Okay, so yeah, that's what we want. We want to call that just the same way this example is calling it. In fact, I'm gonna just steal that code because I can. And go back to our code and say that. Repaint after, right? Instant needs to be imported from standard time. Cool. Now, maybe that's the only thing I need to do, right? Let's see. If that magically works, I'll be so happy. It works if the spinner runs without me moving the mouse. See if it does. It didn't work. I'm missing something still. I wonder if it doesn't work with when it's 0. Let's print it out. So, info egui requests can't spell can't move my cursor. Request redraw after seconds. Repaint after is sex. How's it? What is? as secs. As in seconds. That's what I meant. What I meant to say. And let's run that. Okay, so obviously it's not redrawing. So 0 is not working. Maybe if we see a 0, we just immediately request another redraw. Or maybe I'm missing something else. What does this example show? Oh. Oh, it's probably going back into our event loop, but not as a window event or a redraw request, right? What does this say? Oh, it just does a loop without an event? What event do we get? Maybe it's a special event. Events cleared, resumed, suspended, user event. Send event. Did that example use send event? No. Okay, that's not it. Device event, new events. Is this it? This event type is useful as a place to put code that should be done before you start process events, such as updating frame timing information or benchmarking or checking the start cause to see if the timer. Oh, you know what I just thought of? I can put back the code in here where I was always printing out what event we were getting. And we'll actually see it there, right? So right before we do the match event, we can just do info. This is going to be a lot of events, but that's okay. Why I had to add the colon question mark, if you're wondering, is without that, it'll print it if the type implements the display trait. A lot of types don't implement the display trait, but will implement what's called the debug trait. If you add colon question mark, then we'll get the debugging string version of the value printed out. And that happens to be supported a lot in some cases where the display trait is not. But the output is not as like nicely formatted, if that makes sense. Okay, so we are getting events. There just aren't like mouse events. So I'm gonna peek at what they were. Okay, it's new events, resume time reached. I think that's what we want to look for. New events, resume time reached. Event, new events. Sort of a strange value. Start cause. Hey there, dude, man. What's the woe for? Oh, sent if a time specified by waiting until. That's exactly what we want. We want resume. Was that what I was looking at and I just didn't remember? Yeah, it was resume time reached. Okay, so new events, resume time reached. So I think here we just Actually, don't we want to do the same thing? We want to do the same thing as redraw requested, so I can just gang these together with a pipe, right? Except for it doesn't like that. Not bound in all patterns. Wait, what? Do I need to say start cause resume time reached? I don't know if I have the okay, I don't know if I have the syntax for this correct. Let me just put an empty braces there to see if I got it right. No, I did not get it. Oh, right. The syntax is not exactly correct. It should be like start cause if start cause equals that, right? Do I have that name wrong? I have it right, but it probably needs to be imported. Yeah, there we go. Found struct variant. Oh. Is that the problem that... Oh, yeah, it has stuff in it. Shoot, that's the problem. I don't need the stuff. So, yeah, this should go there with dot dot in there. I think that's how you do it, right? I'll get the syntax eventually. Yeah, that was it. Hey there, Marco Silva. How are you doing? There's no help, but there's commands. If I spelled it right, it would help. There we go. What are we doing today? Today we're learning and playing with wgpu, egui, and rapier. What the heck is... Oh yeah, you can't have a space there. What is wgpu? That's the low-level library we're playing with. And egui? What the heck is that? It's an immediate mode GUI library for Rust. When I get this running again, I can show you what it does. So wgpu, safe and portable Rust-only wrapper for all sorts of GUI libraries. That's what we're doing to draw the graphics here. egui is what we're using to draw this. It kind of draws in combination or integrated with the graphics library, wgpu, so they're working together. We draw this triangle ourselves, and we let egui help us describe how to draw the user interface here. Right now, I'm trying to get that spinner to spin even when I don't move the mouse. I think I almost got it. Yeah, I don't have a project right now. This is just tinkering around trying to learn those libraries. Yeah, so I think what I want to do is say, if we get that, treat it as if we were asked to redraw, and then we just redraw. Oh, wait, we're not supposed to do that. Yeah. We're supposed to request a redraw, right? So kind of like what I did down here. Window, request, redraw. Okay, so if we get a resume time reached, request a redraw. Same as if we were told to repaint from egui, or if our window got resized. And then that'll funnel us back into here. All right, so then let's hope that this doesn't break things. That sure is a cool spinner. I know. I didn't even write that. It was the egui guys. Hey, look at that. We're drawing the spinner, but I think we're drawing it way too many times. You know what I need is I need like an FPS counter in here somewhere. But just looking down here, it looks like that's updating way more frequently than it should. Maybe it is 60 hertz though. What does the frequency look like? 904 minus 888 is what? Can't do math in my head. What if we subtract 4 from both numbers? Then we get 84. So that would be 26 milliseconds? What's 1 over 26 milliseconds? I can't do that kind of math in my head. But I know who can. It's TS Just. Good morning, TS Just. Tell me how many frames per second is 26 milliseconds. See if you could tell me before I type it into my own calculator to figure it out. 1 divided by 0.026 equals 38.46. Really? Not even 60 FPS? Maybe that was just an outlier? 887. Wait, it only did it in 1 millisecond there? I think it's actually unbound. It's going as fast as it possibly can. So maybe I need to cap it. Maybe I need to tell it at least wait whatever 1/60 is. If you looked at ZellaJ, I don't know what that is. Maybe get a plugin going for it using these tools. What's ZellaJ? 1 divided by 60 is 16 2/3 milliseconds. So what if we put in that as a app, right? So let's say the repaint after is the maximum of what redraw tells us, and duration from milliseconds. 1 divided by 60. So then there's sort of like a cap to why is it not like that number? Expected U64. Oh, can I say from milliseconds float? From seconds, that'll work. That's actually what I wanted anyway, right? I didn't have the factor of 1,000 in there, so it is actually seconds. 1/60 seconds. Okay, so now this should be capped at 60 FPS. There's really no point drawing faster than that for this, right? Now we shouldn't perceive any difference. But when I look at the log, it should there should be a minimum amount of time between. So from there to there is 19 milliseconds. Okay. This is not going to be very precise, right? Because it's going to accumulate error every time. That's another 18 milliseconds. Okay, good. So it's capped at 60 FPS. It's probably a little slower than that. It would be kind of nice to have an FPS measurement, wouldn't it? Are prints slowing it down? Maybe. But I can really slow it down by just saying 1/10. Now it won't be more than what if we just make it 1? So now it should only draw once per second, just to see if it really is waiting at least a second. I think that's right. Like once per second, it's changing the spinner. So if I did set it to 1/10, it'll do it 10 times per second. So ZellaJ is like tmux, but in Rust, so you can run anything in a pane as a plugin. Are you talking about like shell as an alternative to just running it in terminal, or in the terminal hosted in VS Code? I'm kind of not understanding what you mean. So if you're talking about like the shell or the terminal, like I don't really need anything more than the one that's either integrated in VS Code or that you get by pressing this button and, hey, look, I have a terminal now. I do use oh my zish, so I don't know why it says that, but I don't really have a need for anything more elaborate like tmux or any of that. I'm pretty happy with VS Code. Okay, so we have the redraw in there. Pretty happy with it. I think I'm ready to check that in. So we had to add it to full tick. We're not using it though. Ignoring it there. I'll have to fix that eventually, but probably not tonight. So we are taking the repaint after and returning it from the redraw. Then we're using it down here. Kind of hard to see with the window so squeezed, but when we're asked to redraw, instead of just calling redraw, we're taking the repaint after that comes out of redraw, capping it at 60, or I need to change that 60 FPS, or maybe make a constant there, right? Capping it to that, and then I can probably remove this info now. And then we're using this control flow set wait until with that time. I can actually improve on this. This is going to accumulate error, right? If instead I took instant now at the very beginning of the program and then always added a constant to it, then it would be not accumulating the error between measurements, right? So I could probably improve that a little bit. But anyway, that control flow set wait until causes another event, which we figured out was event new events start cause resume time reached. And there we have our fourth place where we request to redraw. And this got squished because of the indent. Actually, let's fix that. That indent was caused by me adding this debugging statement. So I remove that and it should not squish it as much. There we go. I don't need this info anymore. I want to make this a constant, right? So like max refresh, max draw rate, maybe refresh rate. Okay. Then let's define that constant somewhere. I like putting constants at the top somewhere. Ooh, what happened here? Let's put it here. Const that, which is a F64 equals 60. 60 point. This is the limit to our frame rate in frames per second. Or draw frame rate. Should be able to understand what that means later when I look at this again. So 1 over that is the number of seconds between frames. Let me clean this up. So the beginning would be let mute next draw time. Maybe last draw time. I think. Last draw time? This will cause the redraw to at least wait 1 frame before we draw the first frame, right? Well, actually, no, we're only going to use it to update this stuff, right? No, then it should be next, right? Yeah, so basically it would be the limit of now plus that and the next draw time, whichever is sooner. Unless next draw time is in the past, right? Let me think about this. So if we just painted and it says to paint like immediately, then we want to wait until the next interval of 1 over 60. So we'll need to know when did we start painting, or when did we Yeah, we want to time it so that the next paint starts 1/60 since the previous one went through. So we don't want to use instant now. That's the main thing. I think what I want to do is I do want to get the instant now, but I want to compare it to next draw time. So I'm losing where my cursor is. So what if we just do next draw time equals I think if if it's been some time since the last time we drew, what would I use here? Too late for me to think of these things. Oh, does the kitty want back in? Yep, I got a meow. Hey there, Irish John Games. How are you doing today? Or tonight? No, for you it's in the morning, right? Next draw time is... Not sure what to put here. Would it be the minimum of this and yeah, so what if I take that out and put next draw time here plus that, and then this just grabs me repaint after, and then this goes back into here. Does that make sense? Think about that. Hey there, cat peasant. Haven't seen you in a while. Then again, I haven't streamed in a while. So the next draw time is the whichever happens first. The current time plus how much time we're asked to draw after. Actually, that's not right. It should be max later of the two, because this could be immediately. Yeah, I think this is correct. So it's the later of these two instants, either now plus how much time we're asked to wait, or if that's too soon, it'll be the last draw time plus the minimum amount of time. I think this is right. Let me make sure I didn't break it. Make sure I didn't break it. Let me reduce the max draw rate down to 10, and I should see like it should look like, I don't have an actual FPS measure yet, but it should look like 10 FPS now. Does it look like 10 FPS to you guys? It actually runs more smoothly if I run the mouse, because that redraw is saying redraw immediately. Oh, it stopped. Okay, it's broken by me moving the cursor. Oh, because sometimes it'll say repaint after like some huge amount of time, right? I'll have to fix that. Triangle's moving at 10 FPS. It was... The spinner moves at 10 FPS if I don't move the mouse. I think that's 10. But moving the mouse breaks it. That might not be correct. Let me put this the way it was. I can just ignore this, and the way it was before was like this plus the max of repaint after and this, right? What it used to be. Yeah, so I definitely broke it. I gotta think about what I did wrong there. Test that by putting it to 10. Probably because it's so late for me, I'm just not thinking clearly anymore. No, I definitely broke it before. Okay, so how is this wrong? Oh, I know why. Because the repaint after, if it's a very large number, you put the next draw time way out in the future, and then it kind of just stays there, right? Even if we get another redraw, which should reset the next draw time. So I think I need two. I actually need two numbers here. I need a last draw time and the next draw time. And this should use last. But then I need to use next draw time somewhere. Let me keep this around. Comment that out, and just this is next draw time. But that's not enough, right? The warning I'm getting here. Never read. I'm reading it down here. Giving me a I don't understand why it's giving me that warning, actually. It does not need to be mutable. Okay, that's true, because I haven't set that yet. Wait, what? Why does it think that I didn't use it? I'm using it immediately. Oh, is it saying that I never used this? That I'm always assigning and then using it? That's probably what it's saying. Okay, let me think about this. So this is a preliminary time. But when we actually draw, right, so when we actually draw, we need to move next to last. So that's down, that's right, where is it? That's right before we redraw, right? Would be last equals next. There. Why am I still getting a warning here? Never read. It's red right here. Oh, okay. Wait, do I not need that variable? I can just use this immediately here? But that's what I had before, but that was broken, right? Oh, this isn't okay. Yeah, this isn't gonna work. We only want to use this if it is in the past. So this should say, okay, so this goes back to last, and we say if, okay, so let's just, for abbreviation, let's say let now equal instant now. If now is greater than or equal to next draw time, then last equals next. Then compute the next to be the last plus the duration, or now plus repaint after, whichever one is later. Can you recommend a rust remover? Nope. Because why would you want to remove rust? Rust is awesome. See if I fixed it. That tortured logic here works. Cool. So it's 10 FPS. If I start moving the mouse, it refreshes faster, which makes sense. Stop moving the mouse, it at least updates at 20 FPS or 10 FPS. Cool. I think I fixed it. So then I can raise this back up to 60. Get rid of that import there. Back up to 60. I like it. It's working. So it auto updates. Well, it updates when it needs to update because the spinner needs animation, even if I don't move the mouse. And moving the mouse doesn't interfere with that. Yes, victory. So now we can check it in, right? Should I like move this max draw rate out of here up to somewhere global? Why do it if I don't need to yet? I'll do it when I need to. Okay, so then my changes really are what? That I implemented redrawing on request from egui is what I really did. I have some commented code I need to put up. This is old, drop it. I wonder if I need I wonder if I should write a comment so that if I look back this in a year, I'll understand why I had to do that. I should probably do that, right? Update our last draw time only if we redrew only if the next draw time arrived. Otherwise, we redrew for some reason other than the timer, right? We redrew for a reason like the mouse moved or you clicked a button. In that case, we don't want to base the next draw time off of that. We want to base it off of just like a minimum update from what am I trying to say? we don't want to update this if we haven't arrived at that time yet. So only if the timer expires, so to speak, do we update our base time for computing when the next frame should be drawn. If our next time to draw is sometime way in the future and we haven't arrived there yet, then we don't want to use that time. We want to continue to use the last draw time as a reference, I think. Or that, whichever is later. This is still kind of sketchy to me, and so there might be a bug here, but For now, I'm just going to put the explanation. So draw when set up to redraw after the requested interval or the minimum frame duration, refresh duration, redraw duration, the minimum redraw interval, or whichever is later. Set up to redraw after the requested interval, don't need a comma, or the minimum redraw interval, whichever is later. Yeah, there we go. Okay, yeah, I want put those comments in there now so that when I read this code maybe a year later, they'll have some inkling about what I was trying to do. Or if later I find a bug, be like, why did I write that? Okay, that's the reason. Okay, now I feel like I can check this in. One more double check. Just here. Okay, the stuff we were just looking at. What about in main? Okay, that's just getting that requested duration back out. Yeah, okay, so we're gonna stage all of this. You wrote that because you couldn't find rust remover. Try crablang. Ah, that's actually a very witty joke. I like it. I fully approve of that. Try crablang to remove your rust. It's almost an inside joke in the Rust community, right? Someone not familiar with Rust would have no idea what the heck we're talking about with crablang, but I guess you could look it up with Google. So feedback egui requested redraw interval. So when no other events cause a redraw, schedule redraws upon request from egui. For example, when an animation is active. Exactly what I just did. Okay. I think I might be almost done for the day. Because I accomplished the goal. I got my code refactored, it looks nicer, and I think we're done with the integration, right, of egui with wgpu. So we have a GUI, we have buttons that work, and we have animations that operate even when I'm not scheduling events. I have no idea what that link is. But is that a... I mean... I'm going to deny the sketchy link, alright? Because I have no idea what the context of that is. But rest assured, TS Joss did see the link, and he was the one you were sending it to, so it doesn't need to appear in the chat at all, right? Efficiency at its finest. Cool. So what am I going to do next stream? Probably I'm going to start working back on the triangle, right? You know, it would also be cool to actually draw an FPS reader. Maybe I'll do that. I'll add an FPS count or like a frame interval readout, and then I'll work on doing more than just drawing a triangle. I think I said that last time the next step after a triangle is a cube, right? So go from 2D to 3D and make a colorful cube, and then after that make a textured cube, and then after that give the cube physics. The day just started for you, TS Jost, but it's ending for me. You know, one of us must sleep while the other one's awake. Those are the rules. So, yeah. Any other last little things I can fix while I'm looking at this. I'll go back to main. I mean, it's pretty cool. Well, hold on. I haven't split that apart from this stuff. It's not too bad. I did refactor the wgpu in its stuff. Egui setup is pretty simple. Integration is pretty straightforward. Again, I'm thinking like stuff like device and surface, maybe these always seem to go together, right? Maybe these should be put into a struct like graphics context. Then we wouldn't have to pass them separately. Where is surface used? Surface, yeah, surface and device are used together at least once, right? So maybe another refactoring step I can do is to combine together some of these things together. Then it wouldn't have to have these long argument lists. They would just have like maximum of 3, I think I should have. Because there are usually 3 groups, right? There are the things to draw, the drawing tools, and then other info like context, right? Draw this with that defined by that, right? And then update buffers is update the buffers accessible through this device and queue and encoder based off of these triangles with the context of that screen description, right? So I think that should be my goal for the next refactoring step is make structures that kind of group together things that are related. Things that are drawn, the drawing tools, and other info. Yeah, okay. Well, we have 0 warnings, 0 errors, accomplished my goal. Time to wrap up the stream. And I want to glance and see, can we pass the stream on to someone else? Oh, everyone's not streaming that I know. Quantum Apprentice is learning Linux. We could raid him. How long has he been streaming for? I'm getting an ad. Oh, we'll pass it over to Quantum Apprentice. Why not? Let me hit the button. Start the raid. All right. Well, I should be streaming again sometime soon, hopefully. I'm not going to make you guys wait another 5 months. That's for sure. So hopefully tomorrow, or if not tomorrow, the next day. We'll see, okay? Hope you enjoyed. See you next time. Bye.